Welcome into the College Football Overtime Podcast. My name is Garrett Chapman. His name is Abe Gordon, and we are less than 11 Saturdays to college football action. I'm not going to do the math because that's not what I want to do, but I think that's like 70-something days, 77 and change. But we are very excited for that, and we're going to be taking care of you all offseason long. So make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, make sure you follow along all 11 weeks because we got 11 fantastic podcasts as we build up to the 2024 college football season. We're very excited about it. We just keep getting teased with stuff, Abe Gordon. This week was the college football playoff schedule that was just released. We'll discuss that, talk about why we are so excited about it, why you should be excited about it too. And then we're going to talk about what this field could end up looking like. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And we're going to do all of that right here on the College Football Overtime Podcast. Before we do it, though, got to welcome in my co-host, Abe Gordon. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing good, man. Just a lot going on. We're towards the end of the college athletics calendar.
Mm-hmm.
We had track and field over the weekend wrap up. Baseball's almost getting to its end, and once we finish with these, there will be no more Pac-12, and all eyes will be on football, which will be the first sport to start up. So very excited.
Yeah, we're looking at Oregon State as really one of the big lone standing teams from the Pac-12. May she rest in peace. But as long as Oregon State's alive, there's still a fighting chance that the Pac-12 will continue rolling. So we'll see what happens with that with the college football or the college baseball, the College World Series coming up here in a little bit, and that's a lot of fun to watch. So I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you're fully aware of what's going on with the College World Series, but we're not going to talk about that today. What we're going to talk about instead is what's coming up with the college football playoff schedule. And I'm just going to run through these real quick, Abe Gordon. What do you say? Round one, the campus games, probably one of the single most anticipated things in the 2024 college football season, the on-campus games. The playoff is coming to small town America, and I think I'm very excited about that. Generally speaking, whenever we get these games, they're all in Atlanta or in Pasadena or in Phoenix or maybe in Arlington, so it's like there are a lot of big cities. Now they're going to be in little old Athens, maybe in Madison, Wisconsin, or up there in Columbus, Ohio. And that's going to be a ton of fun. But those first round games are going to be on Friday, December 20th. We got the first one. That's going to be at an 8 o'clock matchup. And then on Saturday, the next day, we're going to have 3 more of those. And then in the round 2, in the quarterfinals, it's a Tuesday game on New Year's Eve, a day that doesn't really exist that whole week, just the dead week of time. So a Tuesday just on the calendar, but in terms of the reality of a schedule, no, it's just a Tuesday. It's the end of the year. That's going to be the Fiesta Bowl at 7:30. And then on Wednesday, it's going to be January 1st, New Year's Day, the way it should be treated. Three of these matchups in the quarterfinals, the Peach Bowl at 1 o'clock, the Rose Bowl at 5 o'clock, and the Sugar Bowl at 8:45. And if you're so lucky to win that game, round 3, the semifinals, Thursday, January 9th, and Friday, January 10th. That's generally speaking when we have the national championship game, but it's going to be the Orange Bowl and the Cotton Bowl, both kicking off at 7:30. And then right back here in the beautiful city of Atlanta, we got the national championship game on January the 20th, a Monday, which again, we can discuss the dates another time, I guess. But I mean, the Monday games for a national championship, that just feels kind of dirty.
I don't know. It's been like that for a while. So
I know. I've never been a fan of it. That's all. But I think it's fine. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, that's going to be a lot of fun. You're going to avoid the biggest thing is you're avoiding wild card weekend and all of these other NFL games, and you're going to have the NFL playoffs that you'd be contending and going up head to head against, and that just would be kind of tough, So that you line up all of the college football plus the NFL action that you're going to be getting as just a football fan, that's about as good as it can possibly get.
Yeah, let me tell you, I got a problem with the schedule, and I'll tell you what that is. I have a plane trip on Friday, December 20th at 8 p.m. So I'm gonna be watching that first round game on a plane, and then Saturday when you've got the triple header, I'm stepping onto a cruise ship. So instead of mingling with whomever else might be on vacation, you could find me in the sports bar, tuned in and locked into a triple header. So that's the start of my vacation, bud. We booked it. We booked it before they did, man. They didn't tell me what the schedule was. So No, it'll be fun to watch those games on the boat though, and sit there with good old fashioned bucket of beer. Better. So
You're not going anywhere, so it's not like you got to pay for an Uber or anything, too. You're
as long as the plane has got some seat back entertainment where I can pull up this first game.
That's be awesome.
We'll be all set. But other than that, I mean, it's great to see this many games that are, whatever you want to call it, one or done, lose or go home, whatever it is. Just to get this many teams involved and just the question now for me is when do we really get something that is significant? When do we get the first, 9 seed taking out the number 1? When do we get that first big significant change in who's going to make the semis and into the finals? I still think you're going to see a lot of these top 4 or 5 teams. Because of how they're going to do the rankings and seeding, maybe you do get 6 or 7. It's going to be very interesting, but I can't wait until we get to the first part of one of these where double digits in the semis with a chance to go to the championship.
You never know. We'll get there eventually, but another thing that I want to look at with this, and now that I'm actually looking at the amount of games that they're going to be playing, if you are one of the teams, even if you're hosting a playoff game in that first round, so say you're Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, and you go and have a fantastic season. You do everything you need to do. You play in an SEC championship game, but you lose.
Yeah, that's
you
a big
host
problem.
a game. Now you have to play 17 football games. That's a crazy schedule, and that's where I start to get into it. It's like, okay, like this is getting a little out of hand. That's a lot of football games to be playing, and they are still students, right? They are players, and they play football, but they also go to class and everything else, and that's in the heart of exams and everything else. And that's tough, and I understand it, but there's just so many teams, a lot of wear and tear on your body. This isn't just college basketball where you can just add a couple more teams and just go willy nilly. Like you're in a car wreck every time you play in a football game.
I will say this: they are giving guys multiple extra days off of the regular week.
They are.
Friday to Tuesday or Saturday to Wednesday type of stuff, and then so you are getting 7, 8, maybe 9 or 10 days off between games depending on the schedule. So they're trying.
Days. It's 30 days between the first game and the last one.
Yeah, but they're trying. But I agree with you.
Yeah, it's just a lot of wear and tear, and if you really start looking at it. The conference championship games, they make a lot of money, and they're very popular with people with a lot of these big conferences. And I'd be very surprised if we see those go away, but maybe they end up peeling off one of the games in the regular season or something, which God forbid that happens. I don't want to see that at all. It's just a lot of college football games to play. But Abe, I do want to start talking a little bit more about what these fields could look like. So of course the top 4 conference champions are going to be the ones who get the bye. And likely that's going to be SEC team, whether that's Georgia, Texas, Alabama, whoever else wins the SEC. The Big Ten champion, which I'm assuming is going to be Ohio State, could be in Oregon, Michigan. Maybe they repeat and come back to the college football playoff for, I think, the 4th year in a row. The Big 12, I'm assuming that they're going to get somebody in there. And then the ACC, of course, with maybe a Clemson, a Florida State, something like that. But those are the teams that you would likely see getting a first round bye. I'm not sure if another conference can really jump in there and get that. I mean, of course, you can have an American conference team who really shocks folks and can jump in there. Maybe you see an Oregon State or a Washington State have a really incredible season. I don't think that's really going to happen. I might be kind of hard pressed to believe that, but outside of that, I mean, Sunbelt, probably not. You'd really just need to see a Clemson or an ACC or a Big 12 team just fall off the face of the planet. Maybe it happens in the Big 12 because you lose a lot of the stalwarts. But maybe you get a TCU or something who really steps up and rides the wave into a national championship or whatever. But what do you think? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I would expect the SEC champ, ACC champ, and Big Ten champ every year to be one of the top 4 seeds. Yes. And after that, it is kind of a crapshoot. I would lean normally towards the Big 12. I agree with you. But on a given year, I mean, we've seen Cincinnati find their way into it without a 12-team field. So, on a given year, who knows how it plays out. What I'm interested from you, and I've got my list as well, is how you see the breakdown in this year. And we don't need to get into specifically which teams from the SEC and which teams, but just kind of as you kind of make your way towards 12 teams to make up this field, how do you see the conference split coming in your eyes?
Well, I see the SEC, of course, taking the lion's share. Perhaps the Big Ten shares in that. But so if we look at it this way, so I mean, the ACC, I would not be surprised to see two teams from the ACC make it.
So I have my list. I have 2 ACC teams in as well.
I think that's probably an accurate number. Whether that's, it could be a Virginia Tech, a team who could really ride high, a Miami, a team who could really find their own with Mario Cristobal, of course, in year 3. I mean, it could be any number of teams there. I see 2. The Big 12, I have a hard time believing this year specifically they're going to have more than one. Perhaps they do. I doubt it. I think they get the conference champion and then none. I don't think they get an at-large bid.
All I have from them is 1 as well.
Yeah, so I think we're pretty accurate there. And then it's just an even split for the other 9 spots. I mean, you can't do that, obviously. So I'll say 5 SEC, 4 Big Ten.
Wow, I think that's too many. I think that's quite a few too many, to be honest. I've got 4 SEC teams. I've got 3 Big Ten teams.
I think that's probably fair.
I got 2 ACC. I have the Big 12. I have as a group of 5. I have Conference USA. I'm thinking Liberty. It certainly could be an AAC team. It could be a Mountain West team. But I'm going to go with Liberty. I just like what they're doing. And then that gives me 11. And I had to chalk one more up. And I don't think the SEC is going to get 5. Although if I really had to. If I had to stretch, it would probably be more likely that the SEC gets 5 than the Big Ten matches the SEC with 4. I would say this. I'm giving my last spot to an independent in Notre Dame. I think there's going to be, if they're any good at all. Yeah, if they're any good at all, they're going to find their way into this field. And I know it's going to be immensely difficult for them to end up as a top 4 seed. Like the prerequisites are crazy. But I would imagine, especially this year, thinking what they can accomplish, that they'll end up in this field as well.
Yeah. And I'm sitting here looking at these rankings too. Like if we go back and look at the last college football playoff. So we usually look at let's just look at the AP poll. We'll just look at the AP poll because that's the one I pulled up. In this instance, you'd have 5 SEC teams in the top 12, right? So it's not unheard of course, to have that sort of finish.
I think here's my thing. I think they are going to be hesitant in the first year of this field to lean towards one of the power conferences, being SEC or Big Ten specifically, as opposed to a second Big 12 or a second group of 5. I think in time that will work its way there. I do wonder if in year 1 they're a little hesitant to load it up with a Big Ten and SEC field.
Yeah, and I'm looking here at the schedule too. So it's like the difference between like an LSU, Penn State, Notre Dame, Oklahoma. Like those are your next couple of teams right there. And between those 4, 5, if you include Arizona at number 11, those are all 10-3 teams. And all 5 of those, you could probably shuffle them up in a way that it would make it a little bit more even per chance. You know, I mean, like maybe they end up doing stuff like that. I mean, I know the College Football Playoff Committee has always said that that's not something that they put an emphasis on. They don't care if a team is going to come in and get a rematch or whatever. They don't care about the TV run. I call malarkey on that. They absolutely care about that. They absolutely talk about that. Those are closed-door conversations. We'll never be able to prove it definitively. But, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like I think it would not be a surprise to see what you're talking about. And Notre Dame, that is a good poll. That's a very good point.
I was trying to swing you on that one.
Yeah, you that's a good point. I think Notre Dame's going to have a big year, of course, this year, and I'd be hard pressed. Like that's the thing. If you are, there's nobody happier about this expansion than a program like Notre Dame, because they don't have to play in a conference championship. They're never going to get a top 4, so they'll never have a bye. But that next game is going to be a home game. And assuming that they win 10 or more games, they give themselves a chance. And they never have to play in the conference championship game. They never have to have that extra wear and tear on their body. They just do that in the first round where you get to play a Liberty, say that happens. You play them at home. So at that point, you're just fighting for a 5 seed, and I think if you do that, then you control the rest of your destiny, then you go to neutral sites after that.
You
So
know what?
there's nobody happier than Notre Dame.
Yeah, you know what I'm interested in is how this impacts the rankings. And what I mean by that is we're still going to have a committee. They're still going to do their rankings, all that stuff, right? And I do wonder if, because there's less pressure to really get these top 4 right, I do wonder if you see some group of 5 teams slide higher up the rankings. And I'm not saying they're going to jump into top 8, top 6, the way we saw Cincinnati. But I do wonder if you could have a Boise State ranked 9 or 10 and Liberty ranked 13 and kind of set it up to where I know it would take a special year. I'm not necessarily suggesting often, but I do wonder if there are some years where you see multiple group of 5s get in just because of the larger extended playoff field.
Yeah, I mean, and we saw this in 2017. The College Football Playoff Committee had a reluctancy to put in a UCF. Like people crown themselves national champions and whatever. It's not
congrats,
whatever. But they never really. I don't think they ever cracked the top 15. Like they were never in that conversation realistically, whether they were undefeated or not. They never really fully cracked that conversation, and I think that's changed a little bit. I mean, I think it has just a bit. There is a little bit more respect for programs like that. But I'm also not sitting here expecting we're going to have the level of parity that we did last year. Maybe we end up, and I hope we do. Just as a college football fan, as somebody who wants to see good football, maybe we see kind of what we saw last year, where there were a lot of really good football teams, right? And it's not just a clear and obvious 3 or a 4 team field that maybe you get a 5th. But last year, I would say, was the first year that we really had 5, 6, 7 programs that really had a very viable argument to make it into the playoff field. And last year would have been a great field time to have the 12-team playoff, I feel like, because a Georgia versus Michigan matchup in a national title game would have been tremendous. Unbelievable.
I think there are teams last year that were capable of competing for a title that were denied an opportunity because of the limited playoff field.
Yes.
I think Ohio State deserved, let me be accurate here. They obviously didn't deserve to be in based on what the formats was
in a normal year. They generally would have been good enough.
But I think with the quality of their side, I think they probably, even with the loss to Michigan, could have played for a national championship. I think the same thing, obviously, of Georgia, who fell out of the discussion. Yeah. And I certainly think the same thing of Oregon. And so to me, the best part about expanding this field is whether it's a bunch of SEC and Big Ten teams, whether it's a bunch of smaller division teams, like I appreciate the ability to make a mistake. And what I mean is Georgia, made a mistake, lost the game. Having to be perfect over the course of a season is unrealistic, especially as you get these conferences that are just loading up with power team after power team.
It's becoming more and more difficult. Like this year, I think this year we're truly going to learn that it's becoming more like the NFL model where you're allowed to have slip-ups, because
now the difference, here's the difference though. The difference is the NFL model allows average teams to find a way in. And the NCAA model, the college football playoff model, with the exception of a conference champ that maybe is not great, you're not going to have at-larges that don't deserve that. I think you have that in the NFL because of schedule inequalities, and because it's standings and not rankings. There's a big difference.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's true. That's actually a very good point as well. And I mean, you go down the board, and it's, I wonder when we get that first moment where you have a team like maybe it's a Big 12 and they just struggle. And like if you have them getting a first round bye, like say like at Oklahoma State last year, a team that was very hot and cold, very Jekyll and Hyde throughout the course of the season. When they were at their best, they were a pretty damn good football team. But and they were at their worst, they kind of got blown out a couple of times, and they lost to some teams that they probably should not have been on the same field with, And what happens if they win a conference championship? They get that top 4 seed, and And then we're changing our dialogue just a little bit more. And then I just see that the post is going to move depending on which conference it is and depending on whatever happens with it. I mean, I do like that we have pretty set and standard practices, and it's like we know who's going to be that top 4 seed instead of just a guaranteed berth into the tournament. I kind of like the idea of having that home game because you had to win that extra game already. Um, that part makes a lot of sense to me. But I wonder when we have that first instance where somebody probably got robbed of a playoff spot. I mean, maybe they're that 13th best team. And well, I guess they're already expanding at 14. So we're not even really going to have this for a very long time. It's already going to change on us. They've already signed, of course, that new agreement. But I think it makes for a very interesting field. And I understand I've come around a little bit just because I'm a college football fan and I'm going to embrace it and enjoy it. But and all of our listeners, of course, know how I stand on all this stuff. I was not a big fan of expansion. I like the idea of having perfection be the reason you win a national title. And you say it's unrealistic. Yeah, absolutely. It's winning a national title. It's unrealistic.
Yeah,
Most
I
teams don't do it.
understand the stance. Look, you and I have had this discussion and
We've talked
argument
about
before.
it several times.
But my whole thing is, I don't think lack of perfection means you're not as good a team. I want the best teams to play for the title, and I think because of the limited schedule, right? You're only playing 8 or 9 at the time, 8 or 9 conference games. You could have a situation where the best team is not the conference champion. I just want the best teams to be able to compete. And I think if we look at that, even last year, and no offense to Alabama, they were not a better team than Georgia. They were a better team than Georgia that day, and that's
all
how
that
it
matters.
played out.
Yeah.
I understand that. But to me, it's that idea, the pursuit of perfection. I don't need that. I need the pursuit of greatness. And I'm just all
I don't
in.
see how that's different.
The difference between perfection and greatness is the forcibly having a 0 in the loss column does nothing for me.
Well, I mean, it's not a
I think we've had
0.
plenty of one-loss teams that are title worthy. I don't think Georgia having that one loss at the wrong time of year as compared to other teams that lost at the right time of year. I've never liked that whole thing. So
Yeah. I mean, because you look at it, I mean, Bama beat them head to head. So
yep.
done. I mean, but you also had 3 other conference champions who were undefeated. So it's hard, really. I mean, the last year, and that's why I don't like singling out last year specifically, because last year was an anomaly. When you look at the entirety of the field from what we have seen over the course of the college football playoff and the decade or so that we had it, when the 4-team field was there, definitively you had 3 or 4 teams that ironed themselves out. And that's why I know we talk during college football game time and every Saturday in the fall, we talk about what that field looks like. And like, oh my God, it's so tight. What's the difference? It'll play itself out because that's what college football
Except
does.
that it didn't.
Except last year.
The one time. I agree. It's one time.
It didn't. It didn't. And we had a lot of very upset people as a result. And college football expansion, the playoff expansion could have come a year earlier, but ultimately it wasn't there. And last year was just an anomaly of a season. But because most years you're in a situation where you have Georgia, you have Alabama, you have Ohio State, and then you had who was the other one? What was the Cincinnati year? What was that one? So Cincinnati was Alabama. It was Georgia and Oklahoma. That's what I think it was. And those were your 4 teams. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And I don't know, it was Georgia and Michigan. That's what it was. And like, you really only had 3 teams that deserved that 4th spot. And that's why Cincinnati got in, and that's generally how it happens is because the rest of the season plays itself out. And it just didn't happen last year.
Let me ask you one more question about the makeup of the field. You got 12 teams. How long do you think we go before SEC and Big Ten don't have as many, if not more teams than every other conference? I mean,
I don't know. I don't think it ever changes.
I mean, so you're just moving forward. That's just based on the power teams that are there.
Yeah, they're better at football. I mean,
even in a quote down year, could you see the Big Ten with like 2 and the ACC find a way to get in 3, or is that too big? And obviously, we're playing too many hypotheticals, but
that's too many. I'm not going to play
yeah.
that. There's no way I can't realistically say that just because I can draw a sample size from what it's been right now. And you go back to the last 20 years and it's definitively been 1 or 2 teams, I think, from the Pac-12 or the Big 12 or the ACC. And then definitively the
They've been
other
lost.
best teams are in the other two conferences.
Yeah, they've been lost.
Definitively. You know, and it's just, and that's just kind of the way it is. And most of the time, it's like the SEC has some more teams, and that's just the way it's been for the last 20 years, you know? And that doesn't mean that it's always been that way. I mean, we had the Southwest Conference and everything. You had some pretty damn good teams in that conference, right? And it's just, it's not because they just play in the SEC. It's just, you know, it means more. You know?
Yeah.
But I think it's going to make for some very compelling football games, and I'm very excited for that. My number one thing, and I'll say it again, just don't step on my regular season. That's all I care about. It's the best regular season in sports, and I hope it stays that way. We'll see. It remains to be seen, of course, but we do have 4 rounds of extra football from some really good programs that are going to be played this coming season, and I'm very excited for that. The home games, the campus matchups especially, are going to be a ton of fun. But we will get to that in about 6 months. As of right now, we have to continue our offseason discussion, and we're going to be doing that all off season long. I think I said 11 weeks until the college football season kicks off in Dublin, Ireland, as the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets and the Florida State Seminoles square off. And I cannot wait for it. I know you can't wait for it. And I know that if you're listening right now, you can't wait for it either. So make sure you tag along, subscribe, make sure you like, make sure you drop a comment. Tell us what you want, what would you like us to cover as the season goes on before we get into these team previews, as the recruiting season is full-fledged, full steam ahead. And then we get into fall camp here very soon. But college football is going to be here before you know it. So make sure you stick along right here with us on the College Football Overtime podcast. For Abe Gordon, my name is Garrett Chapman. That's it for us. But we'll see you again right here next week. Thanks so much for watching.